What's up, my friend? I'm Tony, and I'm back. And I know what you're thinking. 500 subs, you're saying you're back, who even knows you? And actually, you're probably right, but I'm still back. And excited to have you here because today you'll be writing your very first line of code in 3 minutes. Hopefully to demystify coding a bit by showing you how to try it yourself and that it's way less scary than it might seem from the outside. The great news is that all you need is a computer, and there's a great chance that you're sitting in front of one right now. And if you're not, you probably will be within the next 24 hours. I also want to let you know that I'm aiming for weekly uploads to the channel now, so you'll be seeing me around more often. The thing is that up until last year, I was working at an internet venture accelerator in Boston, where our goal was to start web companies from scratch and launch them out into the real world. And that was super exciting work, but I'm even more excited to say that I recently parted ways with that job to pursue what I'm genuinely excited to wake up every morning to, which is learning how to learn and teaching others how to do the same. And in part, that is what brings me here today. Coding is a high value skill nowadays. Even if you're not trying to use it professionally, I think that learning the basics of programming is something that everyone should do, because it is not only an excellent brain exercise, but it will also give you a lot of context on how the digital world that's all around us works and what sort of things can be done in it. Python is simply one of the many programming languages there are. It is an excellent programming language to start with because it is right at the sweet spot of being easy to understand and extremely computationally powerful. It is also very popular because of its flexibility, and there's a lot of programmers that use it worldwide, which means that it's very well maintained and there's a lot of open source contribution. Also, once you learn your first programming language, it becomes way easier to learn a new one because they all share a lot of things in common. So my message with all of this is that it is a great thing that you're here. And with all that said, 3 minutes on the clock. Let's get you writing and executing your first line of code. Let's go. So once you're on your computer, we only need two things. One is the terminal, which will already be installed in your computer, also called command line if you're using Windows. And the second thing is Python itself, which we'll need to download. And if you're using Windows, the steps are very similar to Mac, so you should be able to follow along. So the first thing we're going to do is that we're going to go into our browser and we're going to Google download Python. We're trying to get to the python.org website, and once you get here, you're going to go into the download section, and you're going to click under download for Mac OS, and then you're going to open that file that gets downloaded, and that will open the installer. You're going to click on continue and agree on all of these, and once you click install, that will be installed in your computer, and you'll see that folder that you just installed with the Python software. Next, you're going to wait for the install to finish, and then you're going to close and move the installer to the trash. And congratulations, you have just downloaded Python into your computer. So the next thing that we're going to do is that we're going to open up our terminal. So I'm going to use command space and then type in terminal. And the terminal is super useful when we want to interact with our computer through the use of written commands. And in here we can operate with files and we can navigate folders the same way that we use Finder, for example. So we can use our terminal for this. One thing that we can use the terminal for is to verify that you have installed Python correctly. So for that, we simply run Python 3 space -- version and press enter, and you can see that you have Python 3 installed. Another thing that you can do with your terminal is that you can run Python. And to do this, we simply enter Python 3 and enter. And what this does is that it simply opens up Python's default interpreter. And this interpreter is what's called a REPL, R-E-P-L, which stands for Read, Evaluate, Print Loop. This simply means that the environment will read and evaluate our commands, and then it will print them to the screen and do this in a loop. So the first function and the first command that we're going to learn in Python is the print function. And for this, we simply write print, open round bracket, and then between quotes, and you can use single or double quotes, whatever you prefer here, you write down some text. In this case, we're writing down hello world, and then you close the quote and then close the round bracket. And when you hit enter, you'll see hello world or whatever text you put into the print function printed on the screen. And finally, when we want to exit the Python's default interpreter in the environment, we simply write down quit and round brackets and press enter. So there you have it, your very first line of code in 3 minutes. Now you know how to print text to the screen. That's not bad at all. The best part is that now you have the power of Python at your fingertips. If you want to take the next step, you might want to start by downloading IPython, which works pretty much the same as Python's default interpreter, only that with added functionality, and it is way more user-friendly. And another thing you might consider downloading might be a code editor. Just as we might use Microsoft Word to write our essays, a programmer would use a code editor to write their code. One great option, and it is the one I use, is called Visual Studio Code. And once you have those things, Python can be used for so many different applications. Some examples are artificial intelligence, machine learning, data analytics and visualization, programming applications, web development, and even game development and finance. But for now, I'm just going to use one of those to give you an example of how Python can be used. And we're going to do data analytics and visualization.
Sweet. So let's say that you have a company that sells a product and you have sales data for that product for the past year. And then your marketing team comes at you and asks for insights on that data, just so they can know how to manage their campaigns in the future. So when we go to look at our data, it turns out that we have sales for the past year, so for 2021, split into 2 categories for each gender. So that can be insightful for analysis, and that's what we're going to look into. If we were to look into this data in a spreadsheet, it would look at something like this. So we have date for each month, we have each gender, and then the amount of sales for each month. So now that we understand what our data looks like, we can go into Python. And here I have an example of the script I wrote to analyze this data and to understand this data a little better. For now, it doesn't matter. You're not meant to understand any of it, but this is something that you can learn later on. And for this is just a demonstration purpose. But the only important thing to understand here is that Python interprets this script line by line. And maybe one important line to understand is this one, that it says read CSV. So here is where Python is reading the CSV file. And then we have a couple of other lines that say PLT show. So PLT stands for plot and show, and this is when Python shows the plots to us. So then when we execute the script, we can see this bar graph that pops up, and this is one part of the script. So now that we're graphing this data, we can understand, okay, so we're selling more of the product to women. So that might be insightful. And then there's another way to look at the data, which is throughout the year. So a time series, and we can see that we have an upward trend line throughout the year. So we can see that there's growth in our sales overall. And we can see again that we sell more product to women. And from here, we can start to do more statistical analysis to see if this is just this sample size or if there's statistical significance. But you get a sense of what we're doing. So we have our data, and then we can use Python to analyze it, to visualize it. And there's a lot more tools that Python has that you can learn, and you can start to master that skill of data analysis and data visualization.
Awesome. So if you're curious and want to learn more about these and Python in general, I have an excellent course on Skillshare where you can learn Python in 30 days through bite-sized lessons of 15 minutes each day, including rest and recovery days every 4 lessons, and even a final project at the end where you will build your own Python application. This could be a great way to understand coding a little better, because one reason might be that you might want to use these new learnings to exercise your brain, or you want to get more context on how the digital world works, or even if you want to get introduced to the field and eventually get a high-paying job as a developer. The course works for anybody who doesn't have a single clue about what coding even is, or to someone who learned in the past and is simply looking for a refresher. And with all that said, I really hope I piqued your curiosity and that you're looking forward to learn something new, because even bigger than Python, realizing that you can learn something completely new and that our brains are malleable and adaptable is what I find truly exciting. And Python is simply an excellent tool to demonstrate that. But for today, that was it. So make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you liked it, hit that bell button if you're looking forward to get notified whenever I post my next video, and leave down there any comments with your thoughts or any questions you might have, and I'll make sure to be around. But until then, I'll see you next time.